I have a statement and 3 questions for the Minister. Minister, so far, not only has the State's response to the climate crisis been wholly inadequate, the manner in which it has been carried out has created fear. It has literally made farming and fishing communities fearful of climate action. I often end up asking the question, should farmers be more worried about climate action or climate change? I'm interested to know what you think, Minister. We need action. It will require determination, vision and leadership. A business-as-usual approach simply isn't working. Ireland is failing to meet its emission targets, and the annual and transition statement is a clear signal that your department isn't about to change its approach. I have learned that in relation to climate action and your department, there are 3 important points to highlight on the outset. Firstly, that government and vested interests portray climate action as a cliff edge for farmers and fishing communities. Government ministers saying that a reduction in emissions will, and I quote, decimate Irish farms, adds to the false narrative that a change will have a negative impact on our livelihoods. As a farmer and a scientist, this is incredibly disappointing. Farmers and fishing communities need to be treated with respect, not fed platitudes. Changes in the sector are inevitable. The first step in solving any problem is recognising there is one. Climate action has to be understood and pursued as a necessity and an opportunity. A just transition can and should be at the centre of all climate policy, and farmers need that reassurance. Secondly, it's necessary to highlight that emission efficiency is not the same as reducing emissions. The emphasis on efficiency instead of overall reduction of emissions is failing, and failing fast. Ireland's 2020 emissions target was 20% reduction. This statement tells us it's going to be 6% at best. At best. Minister, efficiencies won't help farms about to face another drought. Thirdly, I've learned that when governments say things like ambitious targets for all of government climate action and do not follow it up with specific ambitious actions, it is simply paying lip service and is another slap in the face to the next generation of farmers. I have 3 examples which illustrate issues with the current approach. The first concerns valuing sustainability. Monday was World Oceans Day, an opportunity to celebrate the role that oceans play in our lives and to recognise the damage global economic systems are doing to them. As a coastal constituency in West Cork, we know the sea is an amazing natural resource that supports our tourism and fishing sectors. It's essential that we ensure the sea is respected. Unfortunately, we only need to look at the litter and pollution on our beaches and overfishing by super trawlers to realise this isn't the case. We need to support sustainable small-scale fishing. To do that, we need to immediately address the lack of infrastructure for them. Too many small piers dotted around our coastline and the islands are falling into disrepair and lack basic amenities like slipways. They urgently need investment to preserve the livelihood of local families and the practice of truly sustainable fishing. The kind of fishing that has existed in rural and coastal Ireland for generations. The kind of fishing that is more environmentally friendly. The kind of fishing that will keep families living on islands and in other coastal areas. Funding for this comes in limited forms from your department and the Department of Housing to the local authorities. Having been a member of the Coastal Management Committee on Cork County Council, I can tell you how apparent underinvestment in small piers was. At the very first meeting, I had to point out that everyone fighting for the same minuscule amount of funding was counterproductive, and that we should focus the meeting on how we can get more funding for a much-needed area. I was advised to ask you, Minister, can you ensure that small piers are made a priority in the funding streams for marine infrastructure to support sustainable fishing and coastal and island communities? My second example highlights the need for participatory decision-making between farmers, fishing communities, their representatives and government. The Sustainable Development Goals recognise partnerships as an essential part of the solution. The COVID-19 tie-up scheme, for example, demonstrates the urgent need for greater engagement. Once it was announced, fishermen and their organisations contacted me expressing dismay. Not only was it insufficient to cover standing costs, it was ill-suited in assisting an industry on the verge of collapse. Irish South Western Fish Producers Organisation called the scheme botched, and over 98% of respondents to a survey for the skipper said it will not cover fixed costs. Yet you met with fishing representatives in March and April. However, in May, this unsuitable scheme was launched. That is the result of a failed engagement process. This is why farmers and fishing communities are so often negative about policies. Their concerns and suggestions are disregarded. Not only do we need immediate adjustments to the scheme, we also need to be assured that the flawed system which created the scheme are reformed. So, Minister, will you commit to actively engaging with fishing communities and representative organisations to make adjustments to the scheme? And more broadly, will you commit to a partnership-based model in developing climate action policies for emission reductions? Thirdly, there is the matter of priorities. There is a limited budget, yes, but within that there are always choices. Small farmers and coastal and island communities are screaming out for funding. Yet again, this year your department is giving almost 17 million to the greyhound racing industry. This controversial, loss-making industry is funded with public money. Last year's RT Investigates found that this industry, and I quote, is breeding animals to kill them, and now greyhound racing is set to commence ahead of vital services like breast and cervical cancer screening. Why is this deeply problematic industry held in such high esteem by this government? Funding sustainable agriculture and fishing needs to be prioritised. Minister, the annual transition statement and its catalogue of our current policy inadequacies has to be a wake-up call. Action is required immediately. Real changes that will help save and enhance Irish farming. The past 5 years since the signing of the Paris Agreement have been squandered on shallow gestures and a focus on efficiencies over achievements. Even worse than wasting time we do not have is wasting time that our grandchildren and their children will not have. We need action not only because of the inevitable fines, but because of the moral obligation to the next generation of farmers and fishing communities. Minister, what are you going to do to ensure farmers and fishermen can start to welcome and seek climate action? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy, for your contribution and your questions. It seems to be based on a misconception that you can produce food without producing greenhouse gases. It's a biological impossibility. So you cannot. So what we need to do is to maximise our efficiency, maximise our sequestration opportunities, and look at ways that we can displace non-renewable energy sources in the agri-food sector. And that's where our focus has been. And if you look at any of the initiatives that we've had under the department's aegis, alluding to even to Deputy Ryan's earlier contribution, you referred to the Lions Estate and a research project there. Who funded the research project? The Department of Agriculture did. So that's indicative of the direction of travel that the department is, as I said earlier, on a journey. Sustainability isn't a destination in itself. It's an onward journey of continuous improvement.
Just to clarify, is that an acknowledgement that you don't plan to reduce the emissions, you just plan to work further on emission efficiency? Just to clarify.
What I'm saying is it's not possible to produce food without producing greenhouse gases. And what we need to do is make sure that everything we do is geared towards greater efficiency and greater sustainability. We cannot and will not give up our natural advantages in food production, but we will do it as efficiently as it is possible to do it. And therefore, a lot of the initiatives that we have underway, for example, in lower emission slurry spreading, in using protected ureas, protected calcium ammonium nitrate, these are all steps that improve the efficiency. BDGP improves the genetic efficiency of our herd. EBI improves the genetic efficiency of our dairy herd. Sequestration opportunities in terms of, lower intensity management under GLAS, for example, 260,000 hectares of low input permanent pasture, traditional hay meadows. These are all of the steps that we are taking. This isn't something that the department has begun to embrace in recent days. It is something that has been underway for years and years. And as I said, sustainability isn't a destination. It's a continuous journey, and we're on it. On the issue of the tie-up scheme.
Sorry, back to that, Minister, can you acknowledge that some food production actually sequesters carbon, and your statement there that all food production increases emissions is actually incorrect?
Which food production?
Crops, horticulture.
And it produces greenhouse gases as well as sequesters greenhouse gases, and it's a question of maximising the efficiency.
But in the relation to overall reduction of emissions, that's what we're talking about. It's untrue to say that all types of food production will increase our greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, I'd be interested in seeing your paper on the fact that there is no greenhouse gas production from some food, from horticulture, for example. That's not the case.
Would you like to stop it there? Thank you.